I found out on Mother's Day morning, not from a phone call, not from a card, but from a group message I was never meant to see. My daughter's words burned into the screen. "We're doing Mother's Day with just the good ones this year. You can skip this." No explanation, no softness, just a sentence sharp enough to redraw my entire life in one breath. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just about a holiday. It was about who I had become in their story and who had been rewriting it behind my back. Welcome to my YouTube channel. This is my story of betrayal. And if you've ever trusted the wrong person, hit that subscribe button because you are not alone. Here is how it happened. I want to be clear about something before I go any further. I wasn't a perfect mother, but I was present. I showed up. I sacrificed quietly in ways no one ever applauds. I stayed awake through fevers, missed promotions to attend school plays, and learned how to stretch one meal into 3 when money got tight. So when my own daughter reduced me to not one of the good ones, it didn't just hurt. It shattered something fundamental, something I thought was unbreakable. I remember staring at the screen, rereading the message, waiting for my brain to tell me I'd misunderstood. Maybe it was sarcasm. Maybe it was meant for someone else. But then I saw the replies. Heart emojis, laughing reactions. Someone typed, "Finally." That's when my hands started shaking. I was reading comments on my YouTube videos the other day, and I realized I wasn't the only one. Story after story from people who said, "My own child turned me into the villain," or "I didn't recognize the version of me they described." At the time, I nodded along, sympathetic but distant. I never imagined I'd be living that comment section in real time. To understand how it reached this point, you need to know what my family looked like on the surface. From the outside, we were functional. Birthdays celebrated, photos posted, smiles carefully arranged. But underneath, something had been quietly fermenting for years. Resentment I didn't know existed, narratives I never consented to, conversations happening in rooms I wasn't invited into. My daughter Lily wasn't always distant. She used to call me when she was overwhelmed, when life felt too heavy, when she needed reassurance that she wasn't failing. I was her anchor, or at least I thought I was. The shift didn't come suddenly. It came in small edits, shorter replies, canceled plans that look half patience, half judgment when I spoke. I told myself it was adulthood, independence, normal growing pains. But what I didn't realize was that while I was giving her space, someone else was filling it. Her stepmother, Karen, entered our lives politely, too politely. She never raised her voice, never criticized me directly. She smiled while planting questions. "Do you think your mom really understands you?" She had a hard life. Maybe that made her a bit controlling. Small comments, soft words, strategic pauses. At first, Lily defended me. Then she started repeating those same phrases, just slightly reworded. That's how it begins. Not with accusations, but with borrowed language. Mother's Day had always been complicated since the divorce, but never cruel. We alternated, we compromised. So when Lily told me weeks earlier, "We'll figure something out," I believed her. I even bought a small gift for her, something meaningful, something personal, because that's how mothers love, even when it's not reciprocated. That morning, I woke up early anyway. Habit, hope. I checked my phone before getting out of bed. That's when the message appeared. Sent accidentally, then quickly deleted, but not quickly enough. I sat there, wrapped in silence, listening to my house breathe around me. No flowers, no call, just the echo of a sentence that felt like a verdict. What hurt the most wasn't being excluded, it was the implication that somewhere along the way I had been officially classified, judged, ranked, found lacking. I wanted to reply, to ask, what did I do? To defend myself point by point like I was on trial. But something stopped me. A quiet instinct whispering, if you speak now, you'll confirm everything they've been saying about you. So I stayed silent. And in that silence, something darker began to surface. A realization that this decision didn't start today, and that Mother's Day was only the beginning of what they'd already decided to take from me.
Silence has a sound when you're not invited to something you were supposed to belong to. That morning, it sounded like the hum of the refrigerator, the ticking clock on the wall, the distant laughter of neighbors heading out for brunch. Life was moving forward, just without me. I didn't cry right away. Instead, I did what mothers do when something breaks inside them. I cleaned. I wiped already clean counters, folded towels that didn't need folding, reorganized drawers that had been organized for years. Because if my hands stayed busy, my mind wouldn't ask the question that terrified me most. When did my daughter stop seeing me as her mother and start seeing me as the problem? By noon, the truth became unavoidable. No message was coming, no correction, no "that was a misunderstanding." I wasn't forgotten, I was deliberately excluded. I finally sat down and opened our old text threads. Months of messages scrolled by, and suddenly patterns jumped out that I hadn't wanted to see before. Me asking, "Are you okay?" Her replying hours later, "I'm busy." Me suggesting lunch, her responding, "We'll see." Short, controlled, careful, as if every word she sent had already been reviewed by someone else. That's when my mind went somewhere uncomfortable. I thought about Karen again. Karen had always framed herself as the peacekeeper. She'd say things like, "I just want everyone to heal," or "I encourage Lily to set boundaries." At first, I respected that language, Pharisee language, growth language. But now, looking back, I realized how often those words were used, never to bring us together, but to justify distance. Boundaries, when weaponized, stop being about protection. They become permission. I remembered a dinner from the previous year, a moment that felt small at the time, but now glowed red in my memory. We were all at the table, Lily, her father, Karen, and me. I made a comment, nothing dramatic, about how Lily used to call me every night during her first year away at college. I smiled. I was reminiscing. Karen laughed softly and said, "Well, that was before Lily learned emotional independence." Everyone laughed, including Lily. I laughed too, because what else do you do when you don't want to seem sensitive? But something inside me shrank. That was the moment, I think, when I first felt replaceable. After Mother's Day passed in complete silence, I decided not to chase. No passive-aggressive posts, no guilt-laced messages. I told myself, give her space, she'll come around. That's what emotionally healthy people do, right? 3 days later, I got a call. Not from Lily, but from my sister. She didn't waste time. "Did something happen between you and Lily?" she asked. Her tone wasn't curious, it was cautious. My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" She hesitated, then said, "She told Mom you've been difficult for years." Difficult? Such a small word for something that suddenly carried so much weight. According to my sister, Lily had been telling the family that I was emotionally manipulative, dismissive of her feelings, and always making things about myself. I listened, stunned, as my own life was summarized in bullet points I didn't recognize. That's not, I started, then stopped. Because how do you defend yourself against a version of you that's already been accepted as truth? My sister wasn't accusing me, she was reporting, and that distinction hurt more than if she had yelled. That night, I barely slept. Memories replayed in my head, but now they were distorted, filtered through Lily's accusations. Every argument, every disagreement, every moment I thought we'd resolved something peacefully was suddenly suspect. Had I missed something? Had I unknowingly hurt her? Self-doubt is a dangerous place because it makes you interrogate even your best intentions. The next morning, I finally broke my silence. I sent Lily a message. Not long, not emotional, just honest. I heard you've been saying I wasn't a good mother. If I hurt you, I want to understand. Can we talk? I stared at the screen for hours. No reply. When she finally responded, it wasn't what I expected. This is exactly why I needed distance. You always make things about your feelings. I read it again and again. Each time the words felt heavier. I asked for a conversation. She called it manipulation. I asked for clarity. She called it guilt tripping. It was like we were speaking different languages, and hers came preloaded with conclusions. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a narrative, fully formed, rehearsed, and reinforced. Later that week, I learned something that stopped my breath completely. A mutual friend, someone who'd been at Karen's house for coffee, let something slip. She mentioned how Karen often talked about me, how she described me as unstable, overbearing, the kind of mother who doesn't let go. My daughter had been listening to those conversations for years, and suddenly Mother's Day made sense. It wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was the final act of a long campaign. But what I didn't know yet, what no one had warned me about, was that Lily wasn't finished taking things from me. Not even close. Once a story takes hold, it doesn't just sit quietly in one place. It spreads. And by the time you realize it's moving, it's already rewritten rooms you haven't stepped into yet. I found out how far Lily's version of me had traveled when I stopped getting invited to family events. At first, it was subtle. A birthday dinner I might not enjoy. A weekend gathering that was suddenly last minute. Excuses wrapped in concern, so gentle they almost sounded kind. Almost. I asked my mother directly one afternoon. We were on the phone and I could hear her folding laundry while we talked. "Did I do something?" I asked. There was a pause, longer than necessary. "Well," she said carefully, "Lily says you're going through a phase." A phase? As if I were 16 and dramatic, not a woman who had raised a child into adulthood. I pressed gently, because that's what I'd been trained to do. Never confront too hard, never make anyone uncomfortable. "What phase?" She sighed. "Being intense." I hung up and sat on my couch, staring at the wall as if it might explain how motherhood had turned into a personality flaw. That was the day I realized something else, too. No one was coming to ask for my side of the story. They'd already decided it wasn't necessary. I started noticing how people spoke to me differently, more cautious, less open, as if I were fragile or volatile, as if anything I said might confirm what they'd been warned about. That's how reputations die, not loudly, but politely. A week later, Lily finally agreed to meet. Public place, coffee shop, neutral territory. She arrived guarded, shoulders tense, eyes scanning the room before they found me. She didn't hug me. We sat down, and before I could say a word, she spoke. "I don't want this to turn into you crying and making me feel bad." There it was, the expectation, the script. "I just want to understand," I said softly. She took a breath, like someone preparing for a speech she'd practiced. "You've always been emotionally overwhelming. You don't respect boundaries. You make everything about how hard your life was." I listened, really listened. I didn't interrupt because somewhere deep down I still believed that if I stayed calm enough, loving enough, she'd see me again. But the examples she gave were wrong or twisted. A time I'd called her repeatedly because she hadn't come home, she framed it as control, not fear. A moment I'd cried after the divorce, she described it as emotional burden, not honesty. Each memory was flipped, stripped of context, then handed back to me like evidence. When I tried to explain, she shook her head. "This is what I mean," she said. "You're doing it again." Doing what? Existing with feelings? I realized then that the conversation wasn't happening in the present. It was happening inside a story she'd already committed to. Anything I said was just a footnote she'd use later. She leaned back and crossed her arms. "Karen helped me see this," she added casually. As an outsider, she could recognize the patterns. That sentence hit harder than any insult. An outsider, interpreting my motherhood, correcting it, reframing it? I asked the question I'd been afraid to ask. "Do you think I'm a bad mother?" She didn't answer immediately. That hesitation told me everything. "I think," she said slowly, "you did your best, but your best still hurt me." I nodded, because what else can you do when your child hands you a pain you can't disprove? But then she said something that changed the temperature of the room. "I don't think we should see each other for a while," she said. "I need space to heal." Heal from me. I walked out of that coffee shop feeling like I'd just been quietly exiled. No fight, no closure, just a decision delivered with calm authority. The weeks that followed were worse than the initial shock, because absence leaves room for imagination, and imagination, when fed by other people's voices, can turn cruel. I stopped reaching out, not because I didn't care, but because every attempt was labeled pressure. Silence, apparently, was the only acceptable response. That's when Karen stepped in fully. I found out through another mutual acquaintance that Karen had begun supporting Lily more actively. Therapy recommendations, long talks, validation on demand, and always the same underlying message. Your feelings make sense. Your distance is justified. Some mothers don't deserve access just because they gave birth. The idea settled into Lily like a verdict. Then came the moment that broke something in me completely. I received an email, not from Lily, but from a lawyer. It was brief, clinical, requesting that I cease unsolicited communication while Lily worked through unresolved trauma. Trauma. I sat there staring at the word, realizing my relationship with my daughter had just been formally reclassified, not as complicated, not as strained, but as dangerous, and I hadn't even been allowed to defend myself. What I didn't know yet, what no one had prepared me for, was that Karen hadn't just influenced Lily's feelings. She'd helped her build a case. When a lawyer enters a family story, it stops being emotional and starts being strategic. That's what I understood the moment I read that email again, slower this time, carefully. Every sentence had been measured, every word chosen to imply risk without stating it outright. I wasn't being accused of anything specific. That was the clever part. I was being framed as potentially harmful. I called my sister in tears. She went quiet, then said something that chilled me. Karen warned everyone this might happen. Warned them, prepared them. Apparently, Karen had been telling the family for months that Lily might need to protect herself, that she was processing trauma, that boundaries might need to become permanent. Permanent. I asked the question out loud, even though I didn't want the answer. Did anyone ask what trauma? My sister didn't respond immediately. Then, softly, she said, "They assumed Lily wouldn't lie about something like that." That's when I understood the true shape of what I was up against. This wasn't about one bad Mother's Day. This was about credibility, and I was losing mine quietly, efficiently, in rooms I wasn't allowed into. I hired a lawyer too, not because I wanted a fight, but because I was afraid of being erased without one. He read the email, leaned back, and said, "This is preemptive positioning." "What does that mean?" I asked. "It means they're building a narrative early, one where your reactions can later be used against you." So I did the hardest thing I've ever done as a mother. I stopped reaching out completely. No texts, no emails, no birthday cards sitting unanswered, nothing that could be labeled intrusion. Weeks passed, then months. I lived in a strange limbo where I was still a mother, but only in memory. Photos on my walls became artifacts from a life I was no longer allowed to participate in. I caught myself rehearsing conversations that would never happen, explanations that would never be heard. And still, the story about me continued to evolve without my input. A family friend finally told me the truth one evening over the phone, voice low like she was confessing a crime. "Karen says you were emotionally unstable after the divorce," she whispered, "that Lily had to grow up too fast because of you." That was new and devastating. I had gone to therapy. I had worked 2 jobs. I had held myself together because I had to. But strength, when inconvenient, is easily rebranded as dysfunction. I started questioning everything, every tear I'd shed, every time I'd leaned on my daughter instead of pretending I was invincible. Had I burdened her, or had someone simply decided that I had? One night, unable to sleep, I scrolled through Lily's social media, something I'd avoided for months. She'd blocked me on most platforms, but not all. There it was, a post from Mother's Day, a photo of Lily smiling beside Karen and her grandmother. The caption read, "Grateful for the women who protected me, guided me, and showed me what real love looks like." No name, but the exclusion was loud. The comments were worse, people praising her strength, applauding her boundaries, calling her brave. And Karen had commented a single heart. That was the moment my grief shifted into something sharper, because I realized this wasn't just about my pain anymore. This was about truth being slowly buried under applause. I reached out to my lawyer the next morning. "I think there's something else going on," I said. "I think they're preparing to cut me out completely." He asked a question that made my chest tighten. "Is there anything they could use to justify that?" I thought of every imperfect moment of motherhood, every raised voice, every mistake. "I don't know," I admitted, "but they're acting like they already have something." A week later, I found out what that something was. I received a certified letter in the mail, formal, heavy, impossible to ignore. Inside was a notice informing me that Lily had changed her emergency contact information, her medical proxy, and, most painfully, her will. Karen was listed. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter trembling in my hands, realizing I'd just been officially replaced, not emotionally, legally. And as the shock settled into a cold, unbearable truth, one thought kept repeating in my mind. If Karen had come this far, what was she planning to do next? Replacement doesn't happen all at once. It happens in layers, quiet substitutions that seem reasonable until you step back and realize there's no room left for you at all. After the letter arrived, I stopped pretending this was temporary. Temporary pain has an end date. This felt curated. I called my lawyer again, my voice flat like I was reporting weather. "They've removed me from everything," I said. He paused, then asked, "Have they mentioned no contact becoming permanent?" Not yet, but I could feel it coming the way you feel a storm before the sky changes. What haunted me wasn't just being replaced, it was how cleanly it had been done. No confrontation, no final conversation, just paperwork, posts, and quiet consensus. I tried to trace the timeline backward, looking for the moment where intervention might still have been possible. And I found it, in a memory I had dismissed for years. Lily was 17. Her father and Karen had been married less than a year. We were at her graduation dinner, sitting across from each other on a long table filled with polite smiles and forced celebration. At one point, Lily excused herself to the restroom. Karen leaned in toward me and said softly, "You know she worries about you." I smiled, confused. "Worries how?" "She feels like you rely on her emotionally," Karen said. "It's a lot for a young girl." I remember feeling embarrassed, ashamed, as if I'd been caught doing something inappropriate even though I didn't fully understand the accusation. "I never meant to," I started. Karen touched my arm. "I know, I'm just telling you what she says. I think it's important you hear it." I thanked her that night. That's the part that makes me sick now. Because I see it clearly. Karen didn't bring concerns to resolve them. She brought them to plant doubt. From that moment on, I started censoring myself around Lily, holding back, pretending I was stronger than I felt. And into that silence, Karen stepped effortlessly. She went to Lily's therapy sessions at Lily's invitation. She attended milestone events. She framed herself as stable, consistent, safe. I was the messy past. She was the calm present. Months after the Mother's Day incident, I received another message from Lily's father. This time, it was the first time he'd reached out directly in years. "I think it's best if you stop trying to reinsert yourself," he wrote. "Lily is finally at peace." Reinsert, as if I were an object removed for safety. I typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on one sentence. "She's my daughter." His response came quickly. "She's an adult who gets to decide who's healthy for her." And just like that, the conversation was over. That night, something inside me hardened, not from anger, but from clarity. I stopped asking, "What did I do wrong?" and started asking, "Who benefits from this version of me?" The answer was uncomfortable. Karen had gained a role she'd never earned, the devoted maternal figure, the rescuer, the woman who showed Lily what real love looks like. And Lily, my Lily, had gained a story that explained all her pain without requiring her to sit in the discomfort of complexity. Victim narratives are powerful. They simplify the world into good and bad, safe and unsafe. They don't leave room for imperfect love. I decided to do something radical. I stopped defending myself to everyone. When family members hinted, I didn't argue. When friends went quiet, I let them. I documented everything privately, but I didn't campaign for sympathy. Because I finally understood the trap. The more I protested, the more I looked like the person they'd described. Instead, I focused on survival. I started therapy again, not to fix myself, but to anchor myself in reality, to make sure I didn't lose my own story while everyone else rewrote it. That's when my therapist said something that still echoes in my head. She said, "You're not dealing with estrangement, you're dealing with triangulation." She explained it slowly, how a third party inserts themselves into a relationship, positioning themselves as the safe interpreter while quietly isolating the original bond. It only works if the original bond stops trusting itself, she added. I went home that day and cried, not from sadness, but recognition, because I saw the truth too late. Karen didn't just influence Lily, she replaced the lens through which Lily saw me, and now that lens was permanent. Or so I thought, because a few weeks later, something unexpected happened, something that cracked the entire structure they'd built. I received a message, not from Lily, not from her father, from someone inside Karen's circle, and the first line alone told me everything was about to change.
The message arrived at 11:47 p.m. No greeting, no small talk, just one sentence. I don't think Lily knows the whole truth. I stared at my phone for a long time before responding, because hope, once it's been punished enough times, becomes dangerous. The message was from Claire, Karen's former best friend. They'd known each other for over a decade, vacations together, holidays, shared secrets. Claire had been there before Karen married Lily's father, before the blended family, before the reinvention. I asked one question. "What do you mean?" Her reply came slowly, carefully, as if each word had legal consequences. Karen has been guiding Lily more than you realize, not just emotionally, narratively. That word again, narrative. Clara asked if we could talk, voice, not text. I agreed, heart pounding. When the call connected, she didn't waste time. "I stayed quiet because I didn't want to get involved," she said. "But what's happening now isn't fair, and it's gone too far." She told me Karen had always needed to be indispensable in every relationship, at every job. She thrived on being the interpreter, the one who understood people better than they understood themselves. When Lily started struggling, Claire said, Karen didn't just support her, she shaped her memories. I closed my eyes. Claire described conversations I had never been present for. Karen asking leading questions. "When your mom cried, how did that make you feel? Do you think you learned to put others' emotions before your own? Have you ever wondered if your anxiety came from growing up around instability?" Questions disguised as care, but designed to point in one direction. She'd say things like, "I'm not telling you what to think, I'm just helping you see patterns," Claire continued. But the patterns always led back to you. I felt physically sick. Then Claire said something that made my breath catch. She kept notes. "What kind of notes?" I asked. "About Lily? About you? About conversations, dates, reactions, emotional states?" Claire paused. She said it was important to document things in case Lily ever needed to protect herself. There it was again, protection. "What did she plan to do with them?" I whispered. I don't think even Karen knew at first, Claire replied. But once Lily started pulling away from you, the notes changed. They became proof. I finally asked the question that had been forming since Mother's Day. Did Karen want Lily to cut me off? Claire exhaled sharply. I think Karen wanted Lily to be the only mother she trusted. That sentence rearranged my entire understanding of the last few years. Karen hadn't just filled a gap, she'd created one. Claire told me something else, something that explained the lawyer's email, the sudden formality, the escalation. Karen had encouraged Lily to frame her experiences using clinical language, trauma, emotional safety, triggers. Not because Lily was lying, but because language has power. Once you label someone unsafe, everything they do becomes evidence. I asked the question I'd avoided since this all began. Do you think Lily actually believes this? There was a long silence on the line. Yes, Claire said quietly, and that's the worst part. Because beliefs don't require malice, they just require repetition. Claire offered to do something risky. She said she still had access to messages, old group chats, emails, voice notes Karen had sent her over the years. I won't send anything unless you want me to, but some of it shows intent. I thought of Lily, of how absolute she'd sounded, of how confident she was in her pain. If I show her, I asked, will it help? I don't know, Claire admitted. It could shatter her, or it could free her. That night, I didn't sleep at all, because I realized something unbearable. Saving my daughter might require breaking her image of the woman she trusted most. And even if the truth came out, there was no guarantee Lily would choose me. The next morning, I received another message, this time from Lily herself. It was the first time she'd contacted me in months. We need to talk. I've been told some things, and I don't know what to believe. My hands trembled as I read it. Karen's narrative was cracking, but cracks don't always lead to collapse. Sometimes they just change the shape of the damage. And as I typed my reply, one thought consumed me completely. If Lily was finally questioning the story, who would she blame when it fell apart?
We met 3 days later. Same coffee shop, same table. But this time, Lily looked like someone standing at the edge of something unstable. Her hands were shaking as she wrapped them around her cup. She didn't look at me right away. I talked to Claire, she said finally. My heart slammed so hard I thought she might hear it. She showed me messages, Lily continued. Old ones, voice notes, things Karen sent her. I stayed silent, not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew this moment wasn't about my voice. Lily swallowed. She asked questions, she said, questions that made me remember things differently. At the time, I thought it was insight, therapy, growth. Her eyes finally met mine. They were glassy, confused. But when I listened back, it felt like I was being led. The word hung between us. I felt a surge of instinct to reach for her, to comfort her, to finally say, I told you so. I did none of those things. Instead, I asked one question. Do you feel like your pain was real? She nodded immediately. Yes. Then it matters, I said, no matter where it came from. Her shoulders dropped slightly. That was the first bridge. Lily pulled out her phone. There's more, she said. She played a voice note. Karen's voice, soft, measured, intimate. I just worry your mom will always center herself. Some people can't help it. It doesn't make her evil, just unsafe. I closed my eyes. Lily turned the phone off quickly, like she'd been burned. She sent that 2 weeks before Mother's Day, Lily whispered. I remember feeling relieved after hearing it, like someone had finally explained everything. Explained me. "What happened after?" I asked. Lily laughed, sharp, hollow. She asked me what I wanted to do about it. There it was. Not a suggestion, an invitation. Lily's voice cracked. "I thought I was choosing myself." "You were," I said gently, "and someone helped shape what that choice looked like." Lily covered her face with her hands. "I cut you off," she said. "I let people think you were dangerous." I didn't correct her. I didn't soften it, because the truth had to land cleanly to matter. "I don't know how to fix this," she continued. "I don't even know who I am without that story." I leaned forward slightly. "You don't have to fix anything today," I said, "but you do have to decide one thing." She looked up. "Do you want the truth, even if it costs you something?" Her answer came too fast. "Yes." That's when I told her everything. Not defensively, not emotionally, just factually. The lawyer, the letter, the will, the social media post, each revelation tightened her expression. "She made me feel protected," Lily said quietly, "but she also made me feel afraid of you." That's the power of triangulation. Safety on one side, threat on the other. "What happens now?" Lily asked. Before I could answer, her phone buzzed. Karen. Lily stared at the screen, frozen. "She knows we're with your mom," Lily said. "She tracks my location." Another layer revealed. Lily answered the call on speaker. Karen's voice filled the space, calm but urgent. "Are you with your mom?" Lily hesitated. "Yes." The silence that followed was heavy. "I wish you told me," Karen said finally. "I'm just worried this might undo a lot of healing." Lily took a breath. "No," she said. "I think it might be showing me what healing actually is." Karen's tone shifted, barely, but I heard it. "You're not seeing this clearly," she said. "Your mom has a way of—" Stop. That single word felt seismic. "I need space," Lily continued, "from you." Karen went quiet. Then she said something that revealed everything. "After everything I've done for you?" Lily ended the call. Her hands were shaking again, but this time she didn't look lost. "I don't know what this means for us," she said to me. "I don't know if we can ever go back." I nodded. "I'm not asking to go back." She frowned. "Then what are you asking?" I met her eyes. "I'm asking to go forward without someone else standing between us." For the first time since Mother's Day, Lily reached across the table and touched my hand. But just as relief began to settle, she said something that sent a chill through me. "She's not going to let this go," Lily whispered. "Karen has too much to lose." And in that moment, I understood. The truth had come out, but the fallout was just beginning. Healing didn't arrive with apologies. It arrived with distance, silence, and time that felt heavier than grief. Lily didn't come home with me that day. She didn't hug me goodbye. She didn't say, "I'm sorry." And somehow that was okay, because what she did say mattered more. "I need to think," she told me as we stood outside the coffee shop. "Not about you, about everything." I nodded. For the first time in months, I didn't feel erased by her uncertainty. I felt included in it. The weeks that followed were uneasy, but honest. Karen didn't disappear quietly. She sent long messages to Lily, voice notes, reminders of loyalty, of sacrifice, of everything she'd done. But Lily didn't respond the way she used to. She stopped explaining herself, stopped justifying, stopped defending. That alone told me something fundamental had shifted. One afternoon, Lily came to my house unannounced. She stood in the doorway like a stranger, eyes scanning a space she hadn't been in for nearly a year. "You didn't change anything," she said. "No," I replied. "I didn't know what you'd want." She nodded slowly, as if filing that away. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where she'd once done homework, cried over breakups, laughed until she couldn't breathe. "I've been angry at you for a long time," she said, "but I don't know how much of that anger is actually mine." I didn't interrupt. "I think Karen gave me a framework for pain I didn't understand yet, and once I had it, everything fit. That's the danger of tidy explanations. They feel like relief. I'm not saying you were perfect," she added quickly. "I know you weren't." I smiled sadly. I never thought I was. She looked at me then, really looked at me. "That's the thing," Lily said. "She kept saying you didn't know your impact, that you never took responsibility." "And what do you think now?" I asked. Lily swallowed. "I think you carried your pain openly, and I was taught that made you unsafe." We sat in that truth together. There was no dramatic reconciliation, no tearful montage, just a quiet understanding forming in real time. Karen eventually sent one final message to Lily, short, controlled. "I hope one day you understand why I did what I did." Lily didn't reply. Instead, she asked me a question later that night. "Why didn't you fight harder for me?" she asked. It was the hardest question of all. "Because I was told loving you meant letting go, and because I was afraid that fighting would only make you hate me more." She nodded slowly. "I think," she said, "that's the difference." "Between what?" I asked. "Between manipulation and love," Lily replied. Months passed. We rebuilt carefully, not as mother and child trying to reclaim what was lost, but as two people choosing honesty over comfort. Some days were heavy. Some conversations reopened wounds we thought had healed. But one thing never returned: the third voice between us. Karen faded from Lily's life not with confrontation, but consequence. Without access to the story, she lost her power, and I learned something that changed me forever. You cannot control how others narrate you, but you can refuse to abandon yourself just to correct them. To anyone listening who has been labeled, rewritten, or quietly replaced, I want you to hear this. Estrangement is not always the result of cruelty. Sometimes it's the result of influence disguised as care. Boundaries are healthy, but so is context, so is accountability, so is remembering that love can be imperfect without being abusive. My daughter and I are not a fairy tale ending. We are something harder and more real. We are rebuilding without a script. And this Mother's Day, Lily didn't send flowers. She didn't post a photo. She didn't make a public declaration. She showed up. She sat across from me at the same kitchen table. She poured the coffee, and she said quietly, "I'm still figuring things out, but I don't want to do it without you." That was enough.